Okay, so our second talk is by Kajal Singh, and she will tell us about exploring some aspects of the string landscape. Please.
I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present my work here. So I'll be talking about some aspects of string landscape in this talk. And the talk will be broadly based on the work I have done in collaboration with Igor Brokel, Michele Kikoli, and Anshuman Maharana and Kuber Sinha. So these are basically the three works which this talk will be based on. And so in this talk will be broadly in two parts. So in the first part, I will basically talk about this perturbatively flat vacua with a very small value of W0, where W0 is the web of the Volkow-Papavitan potential, superpotential. And in the second part, I will talk about the low energy physics in landscape. And these both concepts will be seen in the statistical context. So yeah. And yeah. Okay, so we know that our universe is de Sitter, and given the fact that the string theory is the main candidate for basically the unified theories, it is necessary to understand the de Sitter solutions in string theory. And to get a realistic picture, one needs to the compactification of string theory from higher dimension to 4 dimension. And these compactification come with the moduli fields, which are basically the massless fields and have a coupling to gravity. So we want to integrate them out, basically to give them mass. And in type 2b compactification, these moduli fields are stabilized by adding fluxes. These fluxes depend on the cohomology of the compactification, and hence they stabilize the moduli fields. Now, there are so many choices of these fluxes because typically a Calabi-Yau manifold, which is the compactified manifold of the string theory, or have lots of these cycles on them. And in 4 dimension, generic type 2b compactification with fluxes consist of around 10 to the power 500 vacua. And these vacua are basically the landscape of string vacua. Now, given such an enormous number of the vacua, it is natural to ask that what would be the statistical picture of these solutions. And some initial work on this was done by Denef and Douglas, but there they have not incorporated the stabilization of Kähler moduli. So here I will talk about the statistical analysis incorporating that thing. Now, a little bit of review of type 2b effective theory. So we'll work on basically the type 2b on O3, O7 orientifolds, which is specified by the superpotential, flux superpotential, which is basically dependent on the complex structure moduli U here, and the Kähler potential, which comes in dependent on these 3 type of moduli. One is basically the axion dilaton, this tau, and omega is which was dependent on the complex structure moduli, and then we have this Kähler moduli. Now, once we have our superpotential and Kähler potential, we can go ahead and calculate the scalar potential, which will give us the 4D supergravity theory. And then to stabilize these moduli, what we do is basically solve the F flatness condition firstly for the complex structure moduli and then for the axial dilaton. And then integrating them out, what we get is the expectation value of this superpotential, which is basically the W0 here. Now, at tree level, what happens is the volume here, which is the volume of the Calabi-Yau manifold, is the volume square of the Calabi-Yau manifold is basically homogeneous in homogeneous function of 3 degree in this Kähler manifold. and that is the reason why this basically the F term of the Kähler manifold and this gravity mass here basically cancels out at the tree level of this scalar potential and gives us this no scale cancellation in type 2b. Now, vacua with low W0 are one of the first requirements in getting a de-sitter, especially in models like KKLT, but they have been very hard to find explicitly. One such set of vacuas are basically called perturbatively flat vacua. So we'll review what they are. So let's work on the basis of the symplectic basis of the cohomology, where everything is basically expanded in terms of these cycles A and B. And the main object we are interested here is basically the pre-potential F here, which is given by this period vector over the manifold. Now the flux superpotential given this period vector can be written in terms of these flux numbers F and H, which are basically we have gotten by integrating the three fluxes over the cycle, and by the Dirac quantization condition, they have to be basically the integers. Yes, and in large complex structure limit, what happens is that this pre-potential basically splits into two parts. One is perturbatively part, which will be basically the homogeneous function of 2 degree in projective spaces of this complex structure moduli. And the second part is the instanton part, which comes from various contributions. Now, so now given that this pre-potential splits into two parts, the superpotential also splits into two parts, which is one perturbative part corresponding to the same perturbative part in the pre-potential, and the other instanton part corresponding to the instanton part in pre-potential. Now, the idea of perturbatively flat vacua is to set this perturbative part of the superpotential to 0 and simultaneously satisfy this F flatness condition for the complex structure moduli to stabilize them. And when you put this perturbative superpotential to 0 by choosing such fluxes, what happens is that the effective superpotential is given by the instanton, and which is in turn very, very small. So that is what is a perturbatively flat vacua with low W0 is. Now, one such nice construction was given by Demirtas et al. It was very recent paper, I think. And in that paper, what is important is they give us a lemma, which is very, which I will tell here. So the lemma is basically, you go to the Miller-Calabi-Yau, because you can do the computation of the pre-potential in the Miller-Calabi-Yau by type 2x instanton correction. So this K ABC tilde is basically the intersection of the intersection number of the Miller-Calabi-Yau, and given that we search for vectors M and K such that they are integer values in the complex structure space, and they satisfy this tadpole cancellation condition. If it's tadpole cancellation condition, then sorry, just a second. Yes. Then what the demand is that this K dot P, which is basically the one of the flux vectors, and this vector P, which is determined by using the intersection number and both of the flux vectors, are basically orthogonal. And the second condition which are demanded is that this vector P have to remain in the scalar cone, which is in turn into these four conditions. That is the first is that all the components of the vector P have to be positive, and similarly these three quantities. Now, given these conditions, if one chooses the fluxes as equation 12 here, what happens is that in direction along u equal to tau vector p, the perturbative part of the superpotential vanishes. Now, since the perturbative part of the superpotential is vanished, the effective superpotential is given by the instant-on correction from the pre-potential. This should be curly f, sorry. And since tau is stabilized at lowest G string coupling, it is effectively a very small quantity here, and we get a very low value of W0, which is the wave of this effective superpotential. Now, given these conditions, it is interesting to check that how many such solution we can find in a typical setting, typical Calabi out. And we'll start with searching with two moduli. And because it is much easier and it gives us insight to go, to higher moduli and what would we need for the higher moduli. So one of the conditions, if you remember, was that these vectors k and p have to be orthogonal. So, and the Kähler code condition demanded that this vector p has to be positive. So combining these two conditions, what we get is for two moduli cases is that these components of vector k have to have opposite signs. Now, using this definition of p, which was given in terms of k and m and this k, b, c, we can find a similar condition for vector m as well. And it turns out that the components of the vector m also have to have opposite signs. Now, to ensure that our n flux is basically semi-positive definite, the solution should be we should have solutions of this vector m and k where, let's say, m1 and k1 have opposite sign, and similarly m2 and k2 have opposite signs. Because if you see from here, if m1 and k1 will have same signs, what will happen is that m2 and k2 will have the similar sign, and both will be contributing positively and not canceling this negative term here. So we'll not be able to satisfy this condition here. So from using this fact, we say that both m1 and k1 have to have opposite sign to each other, and similarly m2 and k2. Now, yeah. So now, given that we have these constraint on the signs of these components of vector m and k, from the tadpole cancellation condition, it is easy to see that we need only go as high as 2qd3, which is the d3 tadpole charge here, in m and k to find all of the solutions of this perturbatively flat vacuum described by Demirta et al. Now, one can solve for all the solutions by generating a sequence of reduced fractions, which are basically the Feyre sequence, and denoting the numerator and denominator to the components of vector k and k respectively. So to see more specifically, we'll do a more specific example. So I'll take the example of CP11169. It was originally also done in Demirta et al. So the problem is, so in this case, we have a two moduli problem because of this G-symmetric locus we have. So from originally CP11169 have 272 moduli, but using the G-symmetric locus, we only get the two moduli. Now the relevant data is basically the intersection numbers and these rationals A and B. And after inputting this data in the formula, we get that effective superpotential, which is basically given by the instant-on correction, is come out to be equation 16, where C and A will depend on the our flux vectors M and especially M here, and P1 and P2 are basically given by these M1 and M1K1 and M2K2. Now, using the F flatness condition, we'll get this relation here that e to the power 2 pi I tau P1 minus P2 is basically given by the ratio of this P2 and P1. Now, to start, this will be basically where we need start searching. So basically, we'll take a, let's say P1 and P2 to be greater than 1. And this will imply that minus this K2 and K1 is greater than 1. And this K vector is basically given by the denominator and numerators of the reduced rationals, which are generated by the Fourier sequence. And starting from this point and making sure that it satisfied all the conditions of the lemma, we'll be able to get half of the solutions because we have chose that P1 and P2 are greater than 1. And then we have to repeat this again by choosing P2 over P1 is greater than 1 and similarly and so on. So we'll get the full solution here. Now, we perform that for CP11169, and we got 2 solutions, which were basically satisfying all the conditions of lemma, and as well as giving us a W0, which was basically less than 0.001. And yes, and the second solution here was already reported in Demiritas. Now we also performed a similar type of computation in a different example, which is CP11222, by taking QD3 as a free parameter, because we wanted to see how it will change if we keep varying QD3. Now you can see that here we get very small numbers for perturbatively flat vacua. More likely, naively, one can say that it is like linear in QD3. And these numbers are basically before the stabilization, and that will also put a cut on these numbers. And then again, if you want to stay in the low W0 regime, then that will also cut a huge cut on this number. And after that, we have also to impose as duality identification to get exactly what we want. Now similar results were confirmed in Karta et al. It came, I think, last month or something. And I just want you to remember this table because it will be important for us to draw conclusion later. Now, we have an algorithm for searching these all solutions in 2 moduli cases. And from there, we can go ahead and do the similar kind of thing for larger moduli cases. So the main challenge in larger moduli cases and also in 2 moduli cases was putting an upper bound in these on these vectors M and K. And since in 2 moduli cases, they have kind of similar or more like opposite signs, M1 and K1, and they were contributing similarly to this influx, we had that it should go as up as 2QD3. But in higher moduli cases, this is not the case because they can cancel. Now, here also we'll use the same fact that this influx have to be semi-definite, positive semi-definite. And only consistent solution for n flux 0 is if we take these all the components of vector M and K, or at least one components of the vector M and K to be 0, depending on the example. And those will translate basically into taking our these vector U's to be 0. And that is basically taking vector P to be 0. And that is at the border or at the boundary of the scalar cone. So we will not, so we will try to keep always M and K greater than 0 here. Now, since both M and K are now bounded from the below, so how high they can go is determined by the tadpole cancellation condition, and the highest value of these M and K can be correspondent to the lowest value of this epsilon parameter, which is basically the cosine of the angle between M and K here. And it was, yeah, Yeah, and it was basically around 0 for our 2 moduli cases, and that's why we started from around like 1, and the Ferris sequence was
5 more
working
minutes
for us. Yes. Oh, really? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So given the lower bound of these QD lower bound, one can find this lower bound by minimizing this m dot k. And once we have found this epsilon minimum, then we can go ahead and solve for the conditions of the lemma for this m and k, and then go ahead and stabilize the moduli and get W0. Now, I'll discuss the second part very quickly. So the low energy physics in landscape. So to study the low energy physics, I already mentioned that at tree level, what happens is the scalar moduli are not stabilized. So we need to go at higher orders to stabilize them. And there are two main methods to do that. One is KKLT, where basically a non-perturbative correction is added to the superpotential, and that in turn stabilizes the scalar moduli at logarithmically in W0. Now the feature of the KKLT is that for tau have to be sufficiently large, the W0 have to be exponentially small, which is basically the point of this log of W0, and the minima is basically supersymmetric, and one can add a uplift to KKLT, but that basically changes the minima at subleading order. And in this case, the gravitational mass is basically controlled by W0. Now, the second thing is the LVS method, where in addition to the non-perturbative correction to the superpotential, one also added the perturbative correction to the scalar potential. And once we stabilize the moduli, we see that the volume is stabilized at the exponential large values, and this main leading tau4 volume modulus is stabilized as the inverse string coupling values. Now, the main features of the LVS is it's ADS and non-supersymmetric. And here also, if we add an uplift, it modifies the previous minima at a subleading order. So M3½ in this case can be given by the minima which we have seen in previous page, and it is basically described by this exponential of the inverse string coupling factor. Now the moduli stabilization is also necessary for the axion physics, the Kähler moduli stabilization, because axions are lifted by the non-perturbative effect, which breaks the continuous shift symmetry So and also the decay constants are stabilized. They depend on the stabilized value of the moduli, because they are basically proportional to the eigenvalues of Kähler metric. So we need the moduli stabilization in axion's case as well. So if we take an example of a 4 moduli case and fix the tau4 and theta4 at the leading order, and the standard model lifts on the third modulus, then we see that the QCD axion equivalent here is the f theta3, and its decay constants and masses are basically given in terms of the volume here at the minima, and volume was exponentially stabilized in terms of the G string coupling. And similarly, there are 2 ultra light axions here, which are also stabilized at exponential orders. Now, to do this, to see the statistic context of this perturbatively flat vacua, we start with basically a formula given in Denef and Douglas, where a number of vacua satisfying this QD3 condition, and given that the W0 satisfies the upper bound, is given by this formula, which is basically linearly in lambda star, which is mod W0 square, and QD3 to the power 5. Now for CP1169 case, which was QD3 equal to 138, we saw that we got only 2 solutions. And once substituting this in this formula, we get it around to be 10 to the power 12 times lambda star. And once you substitute this to be W0 to be 0.01, one is expected to have around 10 to the power 8 solutions. And we got only 2 solutions here. Now, that can be explained by looking at the property of this particular set of perturbatively flat vacua, which are that they have to satisfy this condition, which is they have to satisfy this perturbatively flat direction. And here P is basically a real vector. So the solution under the consideration are basically a very small subspace, which is of dimension this H2 2,1 minus plus 2 of the total moduli, which is of dimension twice as much that. So unless the density are somewhere very peaked, these solutions are not supposed to have large portion of the total solution of the Dennett-Douglas type. And we checked that since the density are smooth function, and so in the set of the low W0 solutions, so these perturbatively flat vacua along this flat direction supposed to have a very, very small subset, because if you can, and this low W0 set of Dennett-Douglas, distribution, we get that it is around proportional to lambda star if we take the ratios of W0 of order 1 to 10. And that is itself a very small subset of whole solutions. So one can say that these perturbatively flat vacua are expected to be very statistically sparse. Now the statistics of low energy physics. So basically we expressed all of the quantities in terms of these 3 parameters, which is string coupling and the web of the superpotential and the rank of the condensing gauge group. And once we have the distribution for these 3 parameters, we will easily get the distribution for all the low energy physics quantities. Now, the string coupling is basically distributed uniformly, and that is basically checked in these 2 works. And in Dennett-Douglas, it is they propose that this web of the superpotential is supposed to be uniformly distributed as complex variable. So we'll take that assumption, and the distribution of rank of condensing gauge group are assumed to be distributed as the inverse power law, because it is higher to satisfy the tadpole condition as we go high in this rank. So once we have all these things, we can substitute everything in terms of these distribution, and we see since the M3 half was M3 half was basically having exponentially factor here 1 over GS. So since the GS is distributed uniformly, we get the logarithmic distribution of the LVS. Similarly, for the axion physics, all the parameters or all the quantities were coming in this exponential, coming with this exponential factors, and hence all of them are distributed logarithmically. So I'll skip these 2 things. And in KKLT case, if we take the distribution as assumed by Dennett and Douglas, which is W0 is distributed uniformly as complex numbers, then the gravitational mass is coming to be as distributed as power law. Now, this is not very, how to say? So since KKLT requires very small values of W0, we do not know for sure that W0 is uniformly distributed as expected or predicted by Dennett and Douglas at such low values. And once we choose some specific construction like perturbatively flat vacua, where W0 is basically also at some exponential 1 over G string, and once we assume such kind of dependence, it is supposed to be distributed logarithmically as the LVS case. And also the logarithmic distribution of the axion couplings are valid as long as we satisfy this bound, because the volume modulus have to suppose to be growing around h11 to the power 3. Okay, so to finish it quickly, so we presented exhaustive searches of perturbatively flat vacua, and our analysis indicates that these vacuas are supposed to be sparse in low W0 set of Denef and Douglas vacua, and the distribution of basically supersymmetry breaking scale and axion physics are logarithmic. And one can also do a correlated study of these different low energy physics, which is kind of a future direction. And yeah, and for the, yeah, I think, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I went a little bit time.
Are there any questions? So maybe I can start with one. So one has seen that sort of one way to get more potential vacua is to increase this D3 tadpole. But is that problematic for like other moduli stabilization, viewing it in terms of, for example, the tadpole problem, that if you increase your tadpoles, you tend to destabilize some other directions, or?
Yeah, so, okay, so I think you are asking it in regard of the table I presented, right?
Mm-hmm. So at some point you showed a table where if you increase
so basically here we so basically we had this QD3 as a free parameter here, just to see that how many, so because we were not sure, we didn't go in details in this example to get a value of exact QD3, what is in this case of CP11222, because our initial analysis showed that maybe it is not like worth the time right now. So, and I agree that if you keep increasing the QD3 to get many more solutions, you will have other problems to take care of, basically. Yeah.
Okay. So are there other questions?
I think in chat. Okay. Yeah.
So I have one more actually. So what would be a way out to get more potential vacua besides increasing the D3 tadpole? So would you say that if you go to models where you have more than 2 moduli, you also increase the number of perturbatively flat vacua or sort of vacua at small W0 parametrically, or is that also dangerous?
I think if we go to higher moduli, there is a very fair chance to get large number of these perturbatively flat vacua. But again, by checking, if we like assume the Denef Douglas analysis, it is very low set of the total low W0 vacua. So I think the main thing will be, because apart from taking a flat direction here, because I think this is the main, let me just, sorry, just a second. So this flat direction which we choose is, I think, is the main cut. It is putting the main cut on this kind of construction of the perturbatively flat vacua. One can look for other type of perturbatively flat vacua which are not basically set of these type of constructions, and one can expect that there might be a very high number, or at least a significantly high number of the low W0 vacua as predicted by Denef and Douglas, and that is because the epsilon parameter here, which I showed for going in higher moduli. So this epsilon parameter can be very small, and once it is small, we can go to higher number of M and K, and we expect that there should be a large number of vacua there. So yeah, one can expect that, but I think it is required to do.
Thanks a lot. I see no other questions, so thank you again. and then let me stop the recording.